It was one of those gray mornings that feel heavier than they should, the kind that presses against your heart, making you feel the weight of everything you've lost. Emily Carter stood on the front porch of a quiet suburban home, her fingers trembling as she lifted them to knock on the door. The wind carried the chill of early spring, and her worn-out shoes were soaked from the drizzle that had followed her for miles. Her backpack was half empty, her jeans frayed at the knees, and her eyes carried the kind of tiredness that comes from more than just sleepless nights. It came from life itself. She had been walking for hours, knocking on doors, hoping that someone, anyone, would give her a chance. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of good hearts, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, because stories like this remind us that compassion still exists in this world. Inside that warm, well-kept home, Daniel Miller was scrolling through real estate listings on his laptop when he heard the knock. A quiet man in his early 30s, Daniel lived alone in a two-bedroom house in a calm neighborhood in Oregon. Since losing his wife Clara 2 years ago, the house had grown silent. Too silent. He'd gotten used to the routine of work, coffee, and sleep, but not to the emptiness that echoed through every room. When he opened the door, he didn't expect to see a young woman standing there, soaked to the bone, clutching her bag with eyes full of fear and hope. She stammered softly, asking if he knew of any house nearby that needed cleaning or yard work. She said she wasn't begging, just looking for a job, any job. There was something fragile yet strong in her voice, something that made Daniel hesitate before answering. He could have easily told her no and closed the door, but something about her, maybe her trembling lips, maybe the quiet dignity in her posture, made him pause. Instead of turning her away, he opened the door wider and said, "Come inside for a moment. You look freezing." Emily hesitated, her body tense. She wasn't used to kindness anymore. People had slammed doors in her face, told her to move along, even thrown harsh words her way. But the warmth in Daniel's tone made her step inside. The house smelled faintly of coffee and cedarwood, and the air was filled with a quiet peace she hadn't felt in years. He offered her a towel, then a cup of coffee, and for the first time in weeks, Emily felt seen, not as a burden, but as a person. Over the next few minutes, Daniel listened as Emily told her story. She had lost her parents at 16, grown up in foster homes, and aged out of the system without anyone to call family. She'd worked at a diner until it shut down, then drifted from town to town, taking small jobs, cleaning, babysitting, waitressing, just to survive. But luck hadn't been on her side lately. She'd been sleeping in her car until it broke down 2 weeks ago. Now she was walking door to door, praying someone would give her work. Daniel sat silently, watching the pain flicker behind her eyes. He saw himself in her words, the loneliness, the loss, the longing for something steady. Clara used to volunteer at shelters and always said, "Sometimes people don't need saving, they just need someone to see them." Remembering her words made Daniel's heart twist. He told Emily there wasn't any work he could pay her for at the moment, but she could at least stay the night in his guest room, just until she figured things out. She resisted at first, insisting she couldn't impose. But exhaustion won. That night, for the first time in months, Emily slept in a bed, with clean sheets and a roof over her head. When she woke up, the morning light poured gently through the curtains, and for a moment, she forgot she was homeless. Then she saw a note on the dresser, a simple message from Daniel. "Breakfast is on the table. Take your time. You're safe here." Over the next few days, Emily offered to clean, cook, and help around the house to repay his kindness. She swept the floors, washed the dishes, and even fixed a broken cabinet door. Daniel tried to tell her she didn't have to, but she insisted. Helping gave her a sense of purpose again, a small reminder that she wasn't useless. Slowly, the house began to change. The curtains were washed, the flowers in the front yard bloomed again, and laughter returned to a place that had forgotten what it sounded like. As weeks passed, Daniel and Emily grew close in a quiet, unspoken way. He learned that she loved reading old novels and used to write short stories in a notebook she lost years ago. She learned that he used to be an architect, but had lost all motivation after his wife's passing. They didn't talk much about the past, but they understood each other's silences. Sometimes they'd sit by the window, watching the rain, sharing stories about places they wanted to visit someday, though neither had the means to go anywhere. But not everything was easy. Some neighbors began to whisper. A few questioned why Daniel was letting a young stranger stay in his house. Emily overheard someone at the local grocery store call her the drifter girl in a charity case. Those words hit her hard. That night, she packed her bag quietly, planning to leave before sunrise. When Daniel woke up and found her note on the kitchen table, he rushed outside, heart pounding. He found her walking down the street in the misty dawn. He asked her why she was leaving, and she said she didn't want to ruin his reputation or become a burden. Her voice cracked as she spoke, and tears welled in her eyes. Daniel took a deep breath and told her something she would never forget, that kindness isn't charity, and helping someone isn't weakness. You're not a burden, Emily, he said. You brought life back into this house. You reminded me what it feels like to care again. It was the first time anyone had ever said something like that to her. She broke down crying, and he simply stood there, letting her tears fall. From that moment on, something shifted. Emily stopped seeing herself as a wanderer and started believing she could build a life again. She found a part-time job at a local bakery, and Daniel helped her apply for night classes at the community college. The house that had once been filled with silence now carried the smell of fresh bread, soft laughter, and the faint sounds of music drifting from the kitchen. Months went by, and the two became each other's quiet support system. Daniel started sketching again, designing small home renovation projects for clients. Emily began writing again, filling pages with stories about people finding light in the darkest corners of life. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel told her that the house didn't feel empty anymore. She smiled and said, "That's because it's not." Still, life wasn't without struggle. Emily's past haunted her. Memories of nights spent alone, of rejection, of hunger. Sometimes she'd wake up in the middle of the night, afraid it was all a dream. But Daniel would always be there, reminding her she wasn't alone. One night, he told her something that made her heart ache in the best way possible. "You knocked on my door asking for work," he said softly, "but you gave me something I didn't know I needed. A reason to live again." Years later, Emily would look back on that moment as the turning point in her life. With Daniel's encouragement, she published a collection of short stories inspired by her journey. It was titled The Door That Opened. It didn't become a bestseller overnight, but it touched the hearts of many who read it, especially those who had once felt invisible. The dedication at the front read, "For Daniel, who taught me that home isn't a place, it's a person who sees you when no one else does." Their friendship remained the cornerstone of both their lives. Emily eventually moved into her own apartment nearby, but she visited Daniel almost every evening. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments that said more than words ever could. The once lonely man and the once lost girl had built something rare, a bond born not of blood but of kindness. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and comment below, because real kindness still changes lives. And before you go, comment below, "I believe in kindness and second chances." Let's fill the comments with love and hope, because sometimes all it takes is a single knock and a heart willing to open the door.